First Officer Mizak Turon stood frozen at the bridge viewport, his four eyes blinking in asynchronous patterns of distress. The massive human battleship hung in space before them, its gunmetal hull absorbing starlight like some ancient leviathan. 3 kilometers of human engineering that made his spiracles constrict with terror. "They are hailing us again, sir," reported Communications Officer Prill. Her voice warbled with the distinct tremor of someone who had realized they might not survive the next hour. Mizak's secondary heart hammered against his thoracic plate.
"Put them through."
The main view screen flickered, revealing the human captain, Captain Felix Drake. Even seated, the human looked enormous to Mizak's sensibilities. Broad-shouldered, with skin the color of wet soil and facial hair precisely trimmed along his jawline. The human's eyes were what disturbed Mizak most, brown with flecks of gold, and utterly, terrifyingly calm. "This is your final warning, Hegemony vessel," Drake said, his voice low and measured. "No shouting, no threats, just certainty. Power down your weapons systems and prepare to be boarded." Mizak forced his breathing to regulate. "Captain Drake, surely we can discuss this like civilized beings. The Hegemony has no quarrel with humanity." The human's expression didn't change, but something in those golden-flecked eyes hardened. "You lost the right to call yourselves civilized when you raided the Luyten colony. 3,000 human civilians. First Officer Turon, women, children. That was a military action, sanctioned by—" "I don't give a damn about your sanctioning," Drake interrupted, and for the first time a dangerous edge crept into his voice. "Where are the survivors?" "I'm afraid I don't have that information," Mizak lied, mandibles twitching nervously. Mizak felt the stares of his bridge crew. They all knew. The Archon had been explicit in his orders. No human survivors, no witnesses. The Hegemony Council had decided humans were spreading too quickly, adapting too readily to galactic society. Their resistance to environmental extremes, their terrifying endurance, their alarming capacity for violence when threatened, the term Deathworlders hardly seemed adequate. On screen, Captain Drake closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, Mizak involuntarily stepped back. "Very well," Drake said softly. "I hoped it doesn't matter now." "Sir," Security Chief Roke whispered, her cranial plates flushed with fear colors. "What do we do now?" The human made a cutting motion with his hand, and the transmission ended. The bridge fell silent, except for the hum of life support systems. "Prepare all weapons," Mizak ordered. "Full power to forward shields." Mizak turned to his tactical display. The Hegemony cruiser outmassed the human vessel nearly 2-to-1, with superior firepower and shielding. By all strategic calculations, they should be able to destroy the lone human ship. And yet, Zulkai's tendrils writhed anxiously. They are not charging weapons." "Sir," Navigation Officer Zulkai interjected, "there's something odd about their ship's energy signature." "Explain." A chill ran through Mizak's body. "What?" Before Mizak could respond, an alert klaxon blared. "They are not raising shields either," Zulka continued, "but there's an energy buildup I can't identify." "Multiple small craft launching from the human vessel," Ruck shouted. The tactical display showed 12 small signatures detaching from the battleship, but instead of moving toward the Hegemony cruiser, they scattered in seemingly random patterns. "What are they doing?" Mizak demanded. Communications Officer Prill suddenly clutched at her audio receptor. "Sir, I'm picking up a transmission. It's being broadcast on all frequencies." "Let's hear it," Mizak ordered. "Unknown, sir," Roke responded. "They appear to be deploying something." What came through wasn't a voice but music, human music. A haunting melody played on some kind of string instrument, accompanied by a lone voice singing words in a human language Mizak didn't recognize. The melody was achingly beautiful and profoundly sad. "What is this?" Mizak whispered. Science Officer Tellus consulted her databanks. "It appears to be a human composition called Lacrimosa from something called Mozart's Requiem. According to records, it's a mass for the dead." A cold dread settled over Mizak. "Target those small craft, fire when ready." "Sir, they are out of optimal weapons range," Roke protested. "Fire anyway!" The Hegemony cruiser's laser batteries sprayed crimson beams across the void, but the small human vessels were moving erratically, making targeting nearly impossible. On the view screen, the massive human vessel was indeed moving, not toward them as expected, but sideways. No, it was rotating, presenting its broad side to the Hegemony cruiser. "Sir," Zulka called out, voice cracking with strain, "the human battleship is changing position." "Sir," Zulka suddenly shouted. Energy surged from the human vessel. "By the first egg," Vroke whispered. "What is that?" The side of the human battleship seemed to shimmer, and then, to Mezak's horror, it split open. Not from damage, but by design, enormous bay doors sliding apart to reveal analysis. Mezak demanded. What floated in that cavernous bay wasn't a weapon, at least not any weapon Mezak recognized. It was a crystalline structure, glowing with an inner blue-white light, pulsing in time with the mournful human music still broadcasting on all frequencies. Tellus stared at her instruments in confusion. It's some kind of quantum resonance device. I have never seen anything like it." The blue-white glow intensified, casting eerie shadows across the bridge. The human music swelled to a crescendo. "Evasive maneuvers," Mezak ordered. "Sir, the small craft," Rock interrupted. "They have positioned themselves in a perfect dodecahedron formation around us." The tactical display confirmed it. 12 points of light arranged in geometric precision around the Hegemony cruiser. Each small craft was now emanating the same blue-white energy as the device on the human battleship. Suddenly, Tellus gasped. "Sir, they are creating a resonance field. It's connecting with the main device on their ship. Weapons. Target the nearest craft and fire," Mezak ordered. "Weapons not responding, sir," Rock reported, frantically working her console. "The resonance field is interfering with our systems." The view screen activated automatically. Captain Drake stood there, no longer seated but standing at attention. Behind him stood a row of human officers, each wearing a black band on their left arm. The blue-white light had now engulfed their ship entirely. The haunting music reached its final notes, and then silence fell. "You denied them the mercy of surrender," Drake said quietly. "You denied them the dignity of survival, and then you denied them the truth of their fate." Mezak felt his legs trembling. What are you doing?" "An eye for an eye is the old saying," Drake continued as if Mezak hadn't spoken. "But we are not like you. We won't slaughter your crew as you slaughtered our families." A faint hope fluttered in Mezak's chest. Then the blue-white light pulsed once, violently, and every system on the Hegemony cruiser went dead. Emergency lights kicked in, bathing the bridge in dim red light. Instead, Drake interrupted, "You are going to experience what it's like to be remembered." "Nothing permanent," Drake replied. "Your life support and basic systems will remain functional. But you are not going anywhere." "What did you do to my ship?" Mezak demanded. Another human stepped into view, smaller than Drake, with pale skin and bright red head fur tied back from her face. She held what appeared to be a small black cube. "This is Dr. Amara Kothari," Drake introduced her. "She developed what we call the memory box, after studying artifacts from the Yulat civilization. You remember the Yulat, don't you? Another species your hegemony decided was too troublesome to allow to exist." The red-haired human stepped forward. "The technology is quite elegant. Actually, it creates a quantum imprint of memories, experiences, emotions, sensory data, and stores them for perfect recall. The Yuleta used it to preserve the memories of their elders." "We found another application," Drake said. Dr. Cathari held up the black cube. "This contains the memories of the final hours of the Luyten colony, every moment from when your ships appeared in orbit to the final death. Every scream, every plea for mercy, every child calling for parents who couldn't save them." Mezak's primary heart seemed to stop. "You can't." "We already have," Drake said. "The resonance field has linked your ship's systems to this memory box. In approximately 30 seconds, every screen, every audio output device on your vessel will begin broadcasting these memories. They will play on a continuous loop. You cannot turn them off, you cannot block them. Until someone finds you," Drake answered simply. "We have disabled your propulsion and communications. Your distress beacon will activate in exactly 1 galactic standard month. Perhaps someone will respond, perhaps not." Mezak sank into his command chair. "For how long?" "You are condemning us to madness," Mezak whispered. For the first time, something like sorrow crossed Drake's face. No. We are condemning you to empathy. The transmission cut off abruptly. On every screen throughout the bridge, images began to appear, human faces contorted in terror, running through burning buildings. The sounds of weapons fire, of screaming, of sobbing prayers. Sir, Prill cried out, tearing off her audio receptor as the same sounds poured through every speaker. It's everywhere. Every communication channel. Every entertainment system. Even the private quarters displays. Mom, Dad, if you find this, I love you. I'm sorry I didn't run faster. Mezak stared in horror as the scenes played out before him. A small human child, no more than a juvenile, hiding in what appeared to be a ventilation shaft, whispering into some kind of recording device. The child looked up at a sound, eyes widening. The recording shook violently, then showed a Hegemony soldier, one of Mezak's own security forces, reaching in, grab appendage extended. Mezak buried his face in his hands, but he couldn't block out the sounds. Lieutenant Tavi Norris squirmed uncomfortably in the plush chair opposite Admiral Jorston. The Admiral's office aboard Orbital Command Station Proxima was ostentatiously large by military standards, a clear statement of rank and privilege. The recording cut to another scene, then another, and another. To discuss the Drake situation, sir? You understand why I called you here, Lieutenant? Admiral Jorston asked, his voice raspy from decades of inhaling exotic stimulants. Jorston's multiple eye ridges furrowed. Situation? Is that what we are calling an act of psychological warfare that violates 16 Galactic Concord treaties? Tavi carefully kept her face scales neutral. The official report calls it an unauthorized pacification action, sir. With respect, sir, Tavi replied cautiously. Relations weren't particularly friendly to begin with, especially after Luyten. Pacification? Jorston barked a laugh that sounded like rocks in a disposal unit. Captain Felix Drake commandeered an experimental battleship, recruited a crew of malcontents and vengeance seekers, then used classified technology to mentally torture an entire Hegemony cruiser crew. The diplomatic fallout alone has set back human hegemony relations by decades. No, sir. Simply providing context. Jorston's color shifted to warning orange. Lieutenant, are you defending Drake's actions? The Admiral stared at her for a long moment, then his color gradually returned to normal. You served with Drake on the Indomitable, correct? Tavi considered her words carefully. Captain Drake was the most disciplined officer I have ever served under. Methodical. Fair. But, yes, sir, I was his tactical officer for 3 years. And your assessment of his mental state? But his wife and daughter were on Luyten, sir. But, Jorston made a dismissive gesture with 2 of his manipulator appendages. Yes, I'm aware of his personal loss. What I need to know is whether you think he's done with his vendetta, or if the Caribbean massacre is just the beginning. With severe psychological trauma. Half the crew had to be sedated for transport. The ship's first officer committed suicide by ingesting cleaning chemicals. After witnessing what his forces did to human civilians, Tavi pointed out. Tavi felt her scales prickle with indignation at the Admiral's callousness, but kept her voice level. The Hegemony crew aboard the Caribbean suffered no physical harm, sir. They were rescued after 32 days. Tavi straightened in her chair. Admiral, you asked for my assessment of Captain Drake. I believe he executed what he considered justice for the Luyten massacre. I do not believe he intends further action against the Hegemony. Jorston slammed a manipulator on his desk. That's exactly the attitude that concerns me, Lieutenant. This moral relativism, this justification of extrajudicial punishment. And why not? What's to stop him from targeting the Hegemony homeworld next? Or the High Council itself? Jorston settled back, his color shifting to contemplative blue. Perhaps, but that brings me to why you are here. Lieutenant, we need to find Drake and the Requiem before the Hegemony does. Or before he decides his mission isn't complete. Because that's not who Felix Drake is, Tavi said firmly. He's not interested in genocide or mass casualties. If he were, he could have simply destroyed the Caribbean. He had the firepower. Tavi blinked in surprise. Sir, you are being reassigned effective immediately. You will command a small, discreet vessel with a hand-picked crew. Your mission is to locate Captain Drake and secure his cooperation. I want you to give him a choice, Jorston corrected. Either he returns voluntarily to face a closed military tribunal where I can ensure he receives fair treatment considering the circumstances. You want me to bring him in? Tavi translated, Jorston's eyes fixed on hers. Or the next ship sent won't be offering choices. Or, Tavi prompted when the Admiral trailed off. Tavi felt a chill run through her. You'd have him killed. Among other things, the quantum resonance field generator was still in prototype phase, and there are rumors that Dr. Kathari was working on something far more concerning before she disappeared with Drake. Not my preference, Jorston said with unsettling casualness. But there are factions within both human and galactic governance who view Drake as too dangerous to be allowed freedom of action. The technology he stole alone represents an unprecedented security breach. The memory box, Tavi murmured. Tavi nodded slowly. I understand the mission, sir. But why me? There must be dozens of officers with more experience in this kind of operation. That's classified beyond your current clearance, Jorston said firmly. But suffice to say, in the wrong hands or even in Drake's hands, if he's as grief-stricken and vengeful as some believe, it could destabilize the entire quadrant. This was news to Tavi. What kind of technology? You make that sound like a compliment, sir. Jorston's color shifted to knowing purple. Because Drake trusts you, and because your psychological profile indicates you possess something rare in military personnel, genuine empathy, coupled with a stubborn adherence to personal moral codes rather than institutional authority. It's a necessary quality for this mission, Jorston replied. Drake won't respond to threats or appeals to duty. Not anymore. But he might listen to someone who understands why he did what he did, even if they don't entirely approve. Damn him, but the Admiral was right. Tavi had witnessed firsthand the devastation at Luyten during the rescue operation. She'd seen Felix Drake, always so controlled, so measured, fall to his knees amid the ruins of what had once been his home, clutching a charred, stuffed animal that had belonged to his daughter. She understood his pain, his rage. Tavi considered this.
And if I refuse the assignment?
You won't, Jorston said with certainty. Because despite your reservations about bringing in your former captain, you know that if you don't find him first, someone else will. Someone who won't offer choices. When do I leave? She asked. But she also knew that vengeance was a black hole that consumed everything it touched. Jorston's color brightened with satisfaction. Immediately. Your ship and crew are already prepared. The Whisper awaits at Docking Bay 47. Tavi stood, saluting crisply. I will find him, sir. I know you will, Lieutenant. But the question is, who will you find? The Felix Drake you served with, or something else entirely? As Tavi turned to leave, Jorston added, One more thing, Lieutenant. Recent intelligence suggests Drake and the Requiem may have made contact with the Outcast Collective. Tavi froze. The Outcasts? Why would he? Unknown. But if true, it adds considerable urgency to your mission. The Outcasts have no love for either humans or the Hegemony. Or perhaps, Tavi suggested, they are the only faction that hates the Hegemony more than Drake does. Jorston's color darkened. Find him, Lieutenant, before this vendetta of his ignites something none of us can control. In his quarters, Captain Felix Drake sat alone, staring at the small hollow projector on his desk. It displayed two figures, a woman with dark hair and laughing eyes, and a small girl missing her front teeth, grinning widely at the camera. On the fringes of charted space, where nebular clouds cast perpetual twilight across barren moons and forgotten outposts, the human battleship Requiem drifted in silent orbit around a rogue planet, a world without a star, eternally dark and cold. Captain? A voice called through the doorcom. We have made contact with the Outcast representative. They have agreed to the meeting. Felix. Dr. Kathari's voice softened. Are you sure about this? Once we cross this line... Drake didn't look away from the hollow. Thank you, Amara. I will be there shortly. The line was crossed at Luyten. Drake replied, his voice hollow. 3,000 civilians. The Hegemony crossed it. The Galactic Concord crossed it when they accepted the Hegemony's lies about a reactor accident. Everyone who looked the other way crossed it. Silence hung for a moment. Then, the prototype is ready. But the simulations show significant risks, not just to the target but potentially to nearby systems. Drake finally looked away from the hollow image of his family. Will it work? Yes, Amara admitted. The quantum entanglement cascade would theoretically propagate through their entire communications network. Every memory box signal would be amplified 1,000-fold, broadcast to every Hegemony world simultaneously. And potentially millions of psychological casualties, Amara countered. including civilians, children. Exactly what you are avenging. An entire empire forced to witness its own atrocities, Drake murmured. No more secrets, no more sanitized reports, no more convenient political amnesia. The meeting with the outcasts is just exploratory, he said finally. We will hear what they have to offer. Drake closed his eyes. In the darkness behind his eyelids, he could still see the ruins of Luyten, still smell the ash and worse things on the wind, still hear the silence where there should have been the voices of his wife and daughter. And if what they offer is a way to deploy the cascade on a scale we couldn't achieve alone, Drake opened his eyes, looking once more at the hollow image of his lost family. With gentle movements, he switched off the projector. Then we will have a decision to make, he said quietly. As he rose to prepare for the meeting, a single tear traced its way down his weathered cheek unnoticed, unseen by anyone. Just one tear for all he had lost, for all that might yet be lost. The Outcast station hung suspended in the shadow of the rogue planet like a broken tooth, jagged, asymmetrical and composed of mismatched hull fragments scavenged from a dozen different species vessels. No Galactic Concord architect would approve of such a structure. But then the Outcasts had long ago abandoned any pretense of caring what the Concord thought. In the cold darkness of a starless world, a Deathworlder wept, and Galaxies trembled. Drake ignored the comment, his attention focused on the eclectic crowd flowing through the station's central hub. Unlike Concord stations with their neat species segregation and cultural accommodation exongens, here everyone mingled freely, tall, willowy Pelphians brushing past stocky Grox miners, serpentine Nathri coiled around support beams overhead, and dozens of other species Drake couldn't even identify. Captain Felix Drake stepped through the airlock, flanked by Dr. Amara Cathari and Security Chief Marcus Vega. The docking tubes smelled of ozone and unfamiliar spices, the latter emanating from what appeared to be food stalls lining the main corridor ahead. Charming place, Vega muttered, his hand never straying far from his sidearm. Very authentic. They are all exiles, Amara observed quietly, political refugees, criminals, war survivors, species deemed incompatible with conquered society, Drake added. Sound familiar? Before Amara could respond, the crowd ahead parted, revealing their greeting party, a trio of figures as mismatched as the station itself. Leading them was unmistakably a Kivex, though unlike any Drake had seen before. Standard Kivex stood nearly 3 meters tall with iridescent exoskeletons and 4 primary arms. This one was barely taller than Drake himself, with a cracked exoskeleton patched with what looked like synthetic polymer and only 3 arms, the fourth ending in a sophisticated prosthetic that hummed faintly with power. Flanking the Kivex were 2 beings Drake didn't recognize, one floating half a meter off the ground in what appeared to be a personal gravity field, its body a collection of translucent sacs pulsing with bioluminescent fluid. The other a bipedal figure completely encased in an environmental suit festooned with blinking sensors. Captain Drake, the Kivex said in flawless, unaccented standard, I am Tekla. The Outcasts welcome you to Nowhere Station. Drake inclined his head slightly. Thank you for agreeing to meet. How could we refuse? Tekla's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement, the infamous human who gave the Hegemony a taste of their own medicine. Your reputation precedes you. As does yours, Drake replied, though I admit I expected to meet with Jerome Val. Jerome Val no longer speaks for the collective, Tekla said carefully. There was a philosophical disagreement about our future direction. At the mention of the name, a noticeable tension rippled through nearby station occupants. The floating creature beside Tekla pulsed rapidly with amber light. I see, Drake said, though he didn't, not really. The intelligence files on the Outcast Collective were woefully incomplete, with Jerome Val listed as their de facto leader for the past 7 standard years. Drake nodded, following as Tekla led them away from the main hub. Vega leaned in close as they walked. Something's off, he whispered. The Kivex aren't supposed to be this cordial. You said you had a proposal, Tekla continued, gesturing with her prosthetic arm toward a side corridor. Perhaps we should discuss it somewhere more private. Tekla led them to what appeared to be a repurposed cargo hold, now serving as some kind of meeting chamber. A circular table dominated the center, surrounded by assorted seating arrangements to accommodate various physiologies. Please, Tekla said, indicating 3 human-compatible chairs. Make yourselves comfortable. None of this is in the briefing materials, Drake agreed quietly. Stay alert. Tekla's compound eyes glittered. What we discussed today could reshape the balance of power in this quadrant. Some conversations are best kept between participants. You have gone to some lengths for privacy, Drake observed. As they settled, Drake noticed the room had no windows or obvious monitoring devices, unusual in a space station where every cubic centimeter typically served multiple functions. Drake kept his expression neutral. I wouldn't call it a vendetta. The floating creature which Tekla introduced as Mist Between Stars from the Ephemeral Collective settled into a hovering position above one of the table's curved sections. The environmental suit wearer, apparently called 16, simply stood. Now, Tekla said, placing all three of her natural limbs flat on the table's surface, let's discuss your vendetta against the hegemony and how our interests might align. No? Tekla's mandibles clicked again. What would you call deploying experimental psychological warfare against a hegemony cruiser? Justice, Drake said simply. Justice. Tekla repeated, drawing out the word. An interesting concept. Different species have such varied interpretations. To the hegemony, justice means maintaining their dominance over what they consider lesser species. And to the outcasts? Amara asked. Tekla's damaged exoskeleton shifted in what might have been a shrug. Survival primarily, though many of us would not object to seeing the hegemony experience some karmic rebalancing. Mist Between Stars pulsed with deep blue light, and a melodic series of tones emerged from somewhere within its floating form. My colleague asks, Tekla translated, if the rumors are true about the technology you used against the Corribian. Drake glanced at Amara, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. The memory box, Drake confirmed. Yes, it's real. A quantum imprinting technology that captures and can transmit perfect experiential records including all sensory and emotional components. 16 suddenly spoke, its voice emerging from its suit as a strangely modulated buzz. And the resonance field generator? Is that also functional? Drake felt a prickle of unease. That particular technology hadn't been mentioned in any public reports about the Corribian incident. You seem well informed, he said carefully. The outcasts have resources the Concord often underestimates, Tekla replied, including intelligence networks. We know about Dr. Cathari's work on quantum entanglement cascades. We know about Project Mnemosyne. Was it? 16's environmental suit emitted a sound like static laughter. Our information suggests otherwise. Amara stiffened beside Drake. Project Mnemosyne was theoretical. A thought experiment. To what end? Drake pressed. Tekla's compound eyes fixed on him. A partnership. You have technology that could bring the hegemony to its knees. We have the network to deploy it across their entire sphere of influence. Drake leaned forward. What exactly do you want? Mist Between Stars pulsed again, and Tekla nodded. Yes, we should show them. Show us what? Drake wondered, but he didn't have to wait long for an answer. Tekla activated a control on the table and a holographic display materialized above its surface. Revolution, Tekla said simply. The hegemony has subjugated or exterminated 17 sentient species in the last century alone. Luyten was merely their first attempt to add humans to that list.